What was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was put under anesthesia? My husband was put under to get his wisdom teeth out. He was a little anxious and also is just kind of anal. He's an engineer, so he read his pre-op instructions front to back like a dozen times. One of the things it said was you may experience profound disorientation upon awakening. As he woke up, he opened one eye and looked around the room, then said extremely huffily, "I wouldn't call this profound." Then he started crying. Greater than a little anxious and also is just kind of anal. This is a good descriptor for most of the engineers I've ever worked with, also my father and brother. Patient here. Came out of anesthesia and heard Gaudier's Somebody That I Used to Know playing in the recovery room. I asked my so why they were playing it at like 10x the normal speed and the nurse just goes okay so she's not ready to go home yet lol. Am patient's relative rather than anesthesiologist, but as he started going under, patient, hydraulics engineer, started trying to tell the doctor what type of pump they should install to fix the busted blood vessel in his brain. I'm a hobbyist mechanic and a huge gearhead, and while falling asleep I have caught myself wondering how big of an engine I could swap into my cat. A Cadillac V6. How about the other way around? I took my mom for her surgery on her right shoulder and her anesthesiologist was this very dignified, solemn older Persian gentleman. My mom told him, "Just so you know, I wrote directions on myself to make sure you get it right." She was joking around, but she actually does this. Old battle-axe nurse habits die hard. He looked her straight in the eye and said deadpan, "Great. So let's get started on your left knee." Totally got her. It was great. I was giving a young female patient sedation for a routine colonoscopy, and as I pushed the propofol, sleepy medicine, it started to hit her. She sat straight up and yelled to everyone in the procedure room, "I shaved my asshole for you." And she flopped down on her pillow and she was asleep. That was nice of her. I'm sure the anesthesiologist that did my son's dental surgery will never forget him. Specifically, because he came out after the fact clearly trying very hard not to laugh to tell my wife about it. Kiddo was just chatting away while he was getting ready. Now my son is autistic and at the time had a very distinct way of speaking and pattern of emphasis along with a lisp. I literally cannot translate how he sounded talking into text. Edit. Thanks/you/schmobsola for giving me a good idea of actually how to describe this. Imagine you had a soundboard of Butters from South Park that had all these words on it from vastly different conversations and strung them together into the sentences below and you'll have a pretty decent idea of it. He sounds a bit different than my son but it's about as close as I can get. Anyway, just as they're getting ready to put him under he goes, "You're gonna need some hardcore nighttime medicine cause I have ADHD and out," practically snoring even. They get to work, finish up and pull the mask off him. The literal second the mask was off his nose he bolts upright and finishes his sentence from however long earlier. That stuff don't work good on me. I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says with my fingers. Then he goes right back to sleep. This man has at least 2 kids. Patient here. I was a teen. Apparently before I went under I kept mumbling "It's buried, don't worry, stop worrying, it's buried, it's gone." My mom was there and said the staff were eyeballing her uncomfortably and years later to this day every year she still asks me if I remember anything. That if ever I need to talk she'll support me no matter what. I honestly do not know what I meant. Well, at least it's buried. My dad is super resistant to anesthesia and most pain meds, which sucks for him. He warned them when he went to get his hip replaced but evidently they ignored or underestimated his statement. Mid-hip replacement, he woke up, sat up in his seat, and attempted to strangle the doctor to death. He got far closer than a man in his condition should have. When I say mid-hip replacement, the hip was fully replaced. They were about to begin like closing the hole, or whatever the terminology is. I woke up mid-surgery and kept trying to get off the table, and apparently I wouldn't stop telling the doctors to fuck off. I have a vague memory of it but it's mostly blurry. I was coming out of the fog of anesthesia from a colonoscopy. Apparently I didn't recognize my wife and refused her affections, telling her she was pretty, but I was married. Got big brownie points for that. Yes, the last thing you want to do is cheat on your wife with your wife. He's right, I did it once and my wife found out immediately. One of my patients coming out of sedation embarrassed her husband who was in the room by saying that during their sex he likes to have Vicks rubbed on his backside. Thank goodness I'm not the only one who wants open air passages while I get my fuck on. Was under anesthesia for a breast reduction. As I was coming out, my nurse was talking to me and apparently I started saying gets an angel and she looks like Barbie. I kept yelling for Barbie angel and possibly kept trying to hug her and pet her hair. I cried for her on the way home. She called to check on me later that night and referred to herself as Nurse Barbie Angel. She was the sweetest. You probably made her weak, she probably let all the other nurses know that's her new name. A small child at my retail store called me Mr. Lady one time, and that became my nickname for a while. This guy I was dating, he asked me to take him to get his wisdom teeth removed. He told me that anesthesia doesn't affect him a lot and we were supposed to go on a road trip the next day. So anyway he gets wheeled out of the dentist by an old nurse. I'm behind the driver's seat and I see him smacking his lips looking up at the sky. She opens my car door and he said I love her, I love her. He then proceeded to ask me to marry him several times. He tried to pull out his gauze and I told him stop and he said man this bitch is bossy. Then he wanted a milkshake. I would suggest a place and he would scream no. Finally we agree on a place and he tells me he'll give me directions. I drive for 15 minutes before I ask him what we're doing and he said he has no idea. We're in the drive-thru and he says I have something for you. I swear I thought he had bought me a ring the way he had been proposing for last hour. It was his newly extracted teeth. They let me keep them. I want you to have them. He lived on base at the time and was yelling at the gate while they checked his ID for them to hurry up. I finally get him to his room, in bed. He's happily eating his milkshake with a spoon. His mouth was a mess of blood and milkshake. He asked me for a kiss. I gave him a peck. We're married now. I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand please. And making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept. I was under anesthesia to get my wisdom teeth removed. When I was slowly waking up, I heard the nurses talking about Hakeem Olajuwon. I started talking about which Rockets I knew. How I knew Rudy T. They're all like, yeah you do, okay. My girlfriend is sitting there laughing with them, playing along as if I'm so high and talking shit. In reality, I was a bartender at a place where they would frequent. I knew all those guys. And my girlfriend fucking knew I knew them. She just thought the whole situation was so funny though, that she didn't just say something like, no he's serious, it's true. One guy said, before falling asleep, whoa. That feels like a dime bag. My husband woke up from anesthesia after a colonoscopy just after the doctor walked in. He didn't see the doctor and told me no blowjob for you, then fell back asleep and ripped a big fart. The doctor looked at me and busted out laughing. He said not to be embarrassed, people say the weirdest things but this one he'd remember. Just out of curiosity, do you own/operate a penis? Shit just operates itself, takes all the blood from the brain and takes over whenever it wants to. Had my wisdom teeth out. When I woke up I was so excited to get my now extracted teeth and keep them as a souvenir. The nurse said I couldn't. She wheeled me out to the front door where my wife was waiting to load me into the car. She saw my disappointed face and asked, "What's wrong honey?" I turned and pointed to the nurse and said through my gauze-stuffed mouth, "This fucking bitch won't let me keep my teeth." My stunned wife apologized and the nurse explained that it's fine but they were a biohazard, to which I replied incredulously, "They were in my fucking mouth an hour ago." Edit. On a slightly related note, my mill has promised me that I can have her titanium hip after her cremation for a shifter in my car. Love that woman. I got mine in a little plastic tooth-shaped box. That fucking bitch stole your teeth. Who does she think she is, the fucking tooth fairy? Anesthesiologist here. For better or for worse, I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan, so I wear a scrub cap with the Packers name/colors on it. I was doing a pre-op evaluation on a kid who was a big New Orleans Saints fan, and when I walked into the room, his first words to me were "Packers suck," I laughed and continued to prepare him and his family for his redo open-heart surgery procedure. Fast forward to surgery a couple days later, and his mom had come back to the OR as he was going to sleep. Given the fact this was a 3 or 4 time reduced sternotomy, going into the chest again, he had a higher risk of major complications from the surgery. I started to push some meds to have him go to sleep while his mom was holding his hand, and as he drifted off, he said, "Wait, I have to tell my mom something." She got emotional saying how much she loved him, and we were all waiting to hear what he had to say so urgently. I paused giving him the medication, but he was already well on his way to being under, and as he drifted off to sleep, he said, "Packers suck. Kid did great, hope he is doing well, smile." Kind of on topic, when my mom woke up after having a stroke, the doctor asked if she recognized the people in the room. She got my sister's name right, called me my brother's name, and smiled real big at my stepdad and called him asshole. Doctor, yep, she's going to be okay. I'm an anesthetist. Woke up a 70-years-old PT who got a penile prosthesis implant for erectile dysfunction. First thing out of his mouth in his post-surgery stupor was to request a private room and find out when he could take this baby out for a test drive. He was a happily married jokester. I have had to get colonoscopies every couple years since I was 24, so I've gone under quite a bit for someone my age. Every time, when I wake up, I'm crying, and a nurse is comforting me. They say I don't tell them why I'm upset, but I'm weeping every damn time. It has gotten to the point where I warn the nurses I'll be sobbing, but to not take it too seriously. Anyone else have this? No, I'm usually aggressive. In the 5 times I've been put under, I have almost exclusively accused people of stealing body parts and/or another crime. Wisdom teeth was kidnapping and my kidney, gallbladder was my murder, appendectomy I accused the poor nurse of disposing of my family and I would make her pay, fractured skull/brain injury I cried in anger because they wouldn't give me back my face. Surgeon told me that I kept them all laughing through my facial surgery. They had to keep giving me more anesthetic to shut me up, which is probably why I was sick as a dog afterwards. I pressed him hard for details but he refused to tell me what I'd said. When coming out of it I was really angry my fiancé was trying to steal my ice cream. I didn't have any ice cream but I was convinced he was trying to steal it. My husband had his Achilles meniscus repaired. When they brought him back into the room, he stared at me through half-closed eyes until the nurses left and then said, "I love you. I'm glad you're here." I melted. Then he conked back out for about half an hour and woke up with a big gasp. I thought he was in pain, that's how loud it was, and went, "Burger King burger." I said, "You want a Burger King burger?" He said I do. So I had to get him a Burger King burger for dinner. He doesn't remember anything until he was back home several hours later with Burger King sitting in front of him. Lol. The spouse stories are always pretty good. Apparently I woke up with dry mouth, asked the nurse for water and was denied, so I shouted at my husband to spit in my mouth. It seems I won't be living that one down anytime soon. Apparently when I was going under I told the anesthesiologist, "Don't mess this up, I know where you work." I got put under for my wisdom teeth at 17. When I came to, the nurse or whatever was like, "Okay, you're probably a little groggy, just sit tight for a while." And I was like, "Fuck that, I feel amazing." And proceeded to swing my legs off the table which sent my top half spinning right after it and falling flat on my face. People laughed. I remember the laughter. My mom woke up from dental surgery and when we were leaving the surgeon's office, he gave her a goodie bag with floss and a toothbrush and stuff, and the whole way home she kept asking if she could eat the candy that the dentist gave her. Every time I told her there was no candy, she looked so heartbroken, like a little kid when their goldfish dies or something. Then we stopped at CVS on the way home and she wandered off. I found her in the candy aisle holding a giant bag of fun-sized candy and when I told her to put it back on the shelf she dropped it on the floor and galloped away laughing at me. Oh how the turntables. When coming to after surgery, I told my mill that she was naughty and needed a spanking. Nurse here, was 22F, had a teen boy come out of anesthesia who looked at me and said, "Hey, you're the girl from last night." I had to reassure everyone that that wasn't me. My husband had knee surgery. After he woke up he half yelled half whispered at Pulley Jew 5s. So the nurse gave him apple juice, several small cups full. He grinned like a toddler and said apple juice and immediately flopped back and went back to sleep for all of 10 minutes until he woke back up gasping that he couldn't breathe. His mom, who I had met maybe 1 or 2 times at this point, went up to the foot of his bed to grab a nurse in the doorway and he bolted upright. That man projectile vomited pure apple juice directly into her face/body/the wall/the door/hallway. I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. His mom stood there soaked in juice vomit and he just rubbed his eyes and said, "Ah, I feel better, bam." Back to sleep for another 2 hours, lol. I have no recollection of this, but according to my mom, when she met me in the recovery room after wisdom tooth extraction, I was very eager to tell her something but my mouth was full of gauze. So they gave me a pen and I wrote something on the surgical bib. Hours later, when I was back in reality, she asked me what was with the meow meows, my son. I had no idea what she was talking about, so she showed me the bib. It was the Meow Mix theme. I had a surgery to remove bone spurs from my big toes in early February of 2005. I woke up while the doctor was grinding the bone down and asked if he thought Donovan McNabb could lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl win. He nodded at the anesthesiologist and I don't remember anything after that. As an Eagles fan, he wasn't wrong to put you back under. I woke up singing the Magic School Bus theme song while someone 3 beds away was screaming in agony. In my defense, your singing was really bad. I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like?" Since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction. She almost yelled, "These nuts," and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire OR staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under. This was a planned strike. I had a guy, nefarious character, heavy drug use history, who got a bunch of ketamine, probably too much, in recovery from one of the other docs to help with severe pain after his abscess drainage. I was asked to check on him in an hour as the other doc had left for the evening. Went over and saw him in the K-hole drooling on himself but otherwise fine, so I left and came back an hour later. First thing he says to me is, "Why did you do that to me?" I asked him what he meant and he said, "You don't understand, I lived another man's life in there." I apologized and asked him, "How long do you think you were in there?" For reference, it had been something like an hour and a half or 2 hours since his trip began. "I don't know, maybe 30 years." I was speechless. I apologized again, made sure he knew he was safe, made sure he wasn't hurting, and made damn sure he knew it wasn't me that did it to him. DLDR, patient time traveled 30 years in the K-hole. I've heard of people who have dreams that are so vivid that they live entire lives in them. It fucks them up when they wake up. BC, they have memories of their kids who were never real. I was told after surgery I said I love dogs and I want to eat the Taliban. Solid platform to run on. One time a male biology student in his early 20s with a stuck kidney stone, was being put under for surgery. Just as the anesthesiologist was pushing meds and telling me to count back from 100, I looked up at him in a drugged but focused gaze and said, "You're so pretty. You could be in movies than blackness." Anesthesiologist was like a grizzled 70-year-old hunchback-looking guy with a lopsided grimace and more ear hair than head hair. Great doc though. Very last thing I remember hearing was the OR nurses cracking up laughing. It was a smallish medical community and I knew some of the people there, so as a joke somebody snuck his headshot into my chart. I like to think it was him gunning for a second career though. I gave a patient an 4-dose of ketamine for a pain procedure. He proceeded to tell the room that everyone had turned into cartoon characters and then he announced he was melting into a wall of butter. Still my finest achievement as a physician. A little girl was going under and she was holding her mother's hand. She reached out for my hand with her other and as she was going out she joined mine with her mother's and said, "You would be a nice daddy." I probably went beetroot red as I blushed. LMW, my daughter does this same shit with her Krav Maga instructor and he's like 12 years younger than me. It's so embarrassing. She doesn't have the excuse of being on drugs though. She just really likes that instructor. Sounds like she's just trying to be a good wing woman. My boyfriend at the time had just gotten his wisdom teeth removed. On the ride home with his mouth full of gauze, He gets a call on his cell phone. He answered it and just starts talking away. Whoever it was on the other side could not possibly understand a word he was saying with all the gauze in his mouth. But man, he had a lot to talk about and they apparently didn't hang up. After about 5 minutes of this unintelligible phone conversation he looks at me and says "Who with a robot" and gives me the phone. I put it to my ear, and the whole time it's been the Walgreens pharmacy automated notice simply stating his prescription is ready for pickup, playing on repeat. Probably for the best. My dad asked my mom to pick up his butt cheek so he could fart and it was too heavy. For more videos, like and subscribe.